Hi, hello everybody. I'm Shake. I'm in Brisbane, Australia, and I've been a professional gigging drummer since 2004, so whatever that works out to, 21 years, 22 years now. And I've just started DJing in October of last year, 2025. I've been using YouTube on and off for different reasons, PT, gym exercises. I've used it for singing, for practice. I've used it for drumming, for practice, to alleviate my boredom during COVID. And lately I've been doing it for like DJ mixes and set lists on the drum kit. Now I want to start adding some content. I feel like there's a lot of research I've done over the years when it comes to my own setup and my own shopping and equipment, and I wanted to kind of bring all that knowledge together to make it easier for new people who are looking at changing their setup or getting into the music industry. So I've got a list here of a timeline so I don't lose my place, and let's get into it. So this video is more about my timeline, just so you can have an idea of where I'm coming from and what I value when it comes to my purchases. So 1997 is when I started drums. So I had just a cheap Percussion Plus five-piece kit. Great for teenagers, doesn't sound very good. You'd never want to play in a live setting with that kit, but it's fine for at-home practice. Very quickly, I borrowed my brother's drum kit while he went overseas. It was a Tama Rockstar. Massive kit, awesome sound, looked great, massive. It was so hard to transport it. That one had gone pretty quickly. Main thing is 2004 I started gigging with some people. We did a 3-piece and a 4-piece covers band. That's the photo, is my acoustic drum kit that I bought for gigs. That was 2004 and I kept that till about 2010. It was a Pearl Session maple shell drum kit with, I think I had ZXT cymbals, but I got rid of those when I could afford it, and I went to Peisty Dark Energy. That was an amazing kit, looked great, sounded amazing, but not versatile in the sense that it took a lot of space on stage, in the car, in the house. It was always loud, and it just took a little bit more effort to set up. So at home in practice, I actually bought a Yamaha DT Explorer, I believe, which is... Oh, now I've got to find a photo. Just a simple drum kit. Anyway, it went from DT Explorer, and then we used that for cover gigs, and then realized that it was just so much more versatile. Easier in the car, easier on stage, sounded better, didn't need mics, didn't need mic cables, didn't need an 8-channel mixer, you didn't need to soundproof your room for practice, you could wear headphones for practice, you could record a left and right straight to your DAW, or your audio interface. So I sold that one, and I got this one. So Yamaha DT Extreme 3. That was amazing because it had 3 zones per drum and cymbal. So you could have a tom, you could have a maraca, and then you could have a second hi-hat. So you could have hi-hats on both sides, but you still have your tom, then you have your maraca if you need something like an auxiliary percussion. So that kit saw many gigs. It really got its use out of it. Sad day to see it go. However, my next drum kit was this one. Yamaha DT8 mesh kit. So it had the, where is it? There you go. So it had the mesh toms to give that natural rebound and feel of an acoustic kit. It had the same cymbals and hi-hat from my previous kit, and it just had an upgraded module. Same thing, 2 zones on the drums, 3 zones on the cymbals. So you could get I used to get my ride into a china, I had my crash into a splash, I have my toms into a bass drop, I have my mounted tom, which is like a 10-inch, into an 8. So you can see I've become very much pro electric drum kit. Highly encourage it. It's easy to practice at home. I can practice any time of the day, and none of my neighbors know I even play drums. But that's the evolution of the drum kit. But back to these gigs. So 2006 onwards, we started doing duo, which meant I had to start learning to sing and drum at the same time, which was really fun. And then that was great. Lots of gigs, lots of Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, weddings, house parties, all those kind of things. Then COVID hit, 2020, and everything shut down. Very little gigs, and then I started finding myself getting bored. I needed something to practice for. I needed to get out in front of people and playing. So I did a fill-in gig with Empire, cover band, which was great, but it was only one gig. So it was unfortunate that there was only the one. Second band was Ibis, and we did a couple of gigs together, and that was great, but it had its own concerns, which is what I'm getting to when it comes to the speakers. After doing cover bands, I kind of discovered it was probably not in my best interest to join another band. It was so time consuming, driving an hour to a rehearsal space or to house to practice. I wasn't able to pick the songs that I necessarily wanted to play in front of people. So I decided to put my focus more into YouTube. So doing lots of drumming and singing and teaching how to learn songs, which was great for a little bit, but I got bored relatively quickly. 2025, I decided was the time to go solo. I had bought a new drum kit, I bought a new subwoofer, I bought a new microphone, I had new cables. I was pretty close to having everything I needed to go solo. I was already learning to sing and drum at the same time. There was only one thing missing, the speaker. I didn't have a speaker, and I didn't want to go two, I just wanted to go one, so it was less setup for me. And then that brings the evolution of the speakers. And then after having my solo set up and doing a few gigs and getting some negative feedback that my singing's not where it needs to be, I decided to try DJing for something different. Got a controller, loved it for a week, and then I was like, I'm going to upgrade this. And then I started doing gigs as DJing and got really good feedback, considering I'd only done one or two gigs beforehand. And then this year, I've already been approached to do a wedding up north in the Sunshine Coast in May. So I was pretty happy with how I'd gone in the last 20 years with my experience, my gigging, the skills that I'd learned, the lessons that I'd learned, and that's my background. That's who I am. Part 2 of this video is I wanted to go through how did I end up with my dream speaker, and how did I get my dream setup. So every time I look back and go shopping, what would I do differently? It ends up being at the same place. So let me go through that with you now. Alright, first setup was the Eon G2 sub, 15 inch, I believe it's 115 decibels is the max SPL, and it was I think 300 watts. So when this died of old age, I just sold it for basically parts, $200, and I put that towards my next thing. My mixer was a 180FX, cheap quality, cheap sound, faders were bad, and the channels started dying within a few months. So I got that one before it got any worse. My wife had a MacBook that I was able to use for my DJing. I started using that, and then unfortunately that died as well. Old age, I guess, so Apple won't support that one. And then my first purchase was FS Audio Lux 10 and Lux 15. So my plan was to use these for my solo gigs, but I discovered that it only had 2 channels, no reverb, no EQ, no mixer, and I found that with my research, whatever speaker's max SPL is rated at, let's say it's rated at 100, you're probably not going to hit 100 in your live sets. So if something's maxed out at 100 on the spec sheet, you're probably looking at 85, so it's 85%. So these speakers, even though their max was at here, I would get to hear and it would distort. It wouldn't sound very good, so I got rid of those really quickly. The sub I'd sold, and my first brand new sub was the ELX 200 12-inch sub. Amazing. It was 1,200 watts, 130 decibels was the max, meaning, if we go that 85% rule, 130 times, you're looking at about 110. So you could get it to 110 decibels, which is super loud, and it wouldn't distort. So I'm just going to use that 85% rule for most of the speakers we're looking at. I didn't max out many of my speakers because I wanted to keep in pristine condition as long as I can. The problem with this one is it had the 2 channels in, but again, no reverb, no mixer, no effects, not multiple channels. So it was a component of one among many. So my first setup was this. So I had a Yamaha DBR10 speaker, 129 decibels, so it's getting around about 109 as an 85%. And I had my ELX 12-inch sub underneath. And then I would run my vocal mic directly to the speaker. I would run my drum kit directly to the sub. And I would just daisy chain them. Most point source speakers have a 90-degree dispersion horizontally. Most column speakers have, give or take, 120. So yes, there's some that go 90. Yes, there's some that go 180. But the ones that I'll be looking at are 120 to 150, 180. So I started my first gig using this setup, the DBR10 and the ELX 200 sub. Your volume, the quality of the drum kit sounded awesome. However, my vocal was so dry with no effects. There was no EQ. It sounded muddy, and I had a lot of bad feedback, criticism from that first gig. So I sold the ELX 200 and I sold the DBR10, and I started going column speakers. So first column speaker was this one. This is the Prol Session 1. Pretty sure it's 108 decibels as your max SBL, so you're looking at about 92 decibels max. So I had this one, and I think I bought a Yamaha DBR12 at the time, and I took those two for a gig. And unfortunately, the 8-inch sub is just not enough when it comes to electric drums. So if you are a singer guitar, you can handle a small column speaker, Sunday afternoon, a Wednesday night, acoustic set. Then you're probably going to be playing at about the 90 decibels, but you will be maxing out the speaker, but it can handle it just. So I got rid of this one as quick as I could, and then I got this one. You'll see the running theme here is I don't buy new stuff anymore. I am just sticking to secondhand gear because, let's say these Samsung Resound VX 8.1s, they go to 125 decibels. They have a 180-degree dispersion. So this would have been awesome when it comes to one column, a whole room, 12-inch sub. Actually, I can't remember the wattage. Either way, it went super loud. The negative was 2 channels, no effects. So I was going to have to buy another mixer, another component to get my setup going. I was lucky someone offered a really good price to buy this one off me, so that one had gone. Very quickly, a guy in Tweed had a JBL Eon 1 Mark 1. So unfortunately it was the smaller wattage version. So it only went to 118 decibels. So if we go from a max point of view, 118, 85%, maybe 100 decibels, which probably would have been fine for most of my solo gigs. But I would be pushing it. It had basic EQ, it had bass and treble, it had reverb, it had several channels. So at this point my goal was a column speaker that could handle multiple members just in case I did get back into a band. So by this point I had an idea of what I wanted. I wanted at least 4 channels, whether it's XLR input jacks. I wanted a built-in reverb. I wanted at least a bass and treble, if not a 3-band. I wanted at least 120-degree dispersion because I didn't want to go a point source speaker anymore. I wanted something a little bit wider so I could just have one column. I've got a BRZ sports car, so I wanted to keep everything as compact as I can. Plus for my solo gigs, I have the Yamaha drum kit, so I have enough stuff to pack as it is. So this JBL setup was actually quite good. From memory, it's a plastic sub, and I just found the sound not quite good enough when I was cranking it up. So it was almost there, but it was a good setup. Sold that one, got a really good price for it. I then upgraded to the Yamaha Stage Pass 1K, so it's 1,000 watts. I did get the Mark II, so 1,100. It had lots of channels. It had reverb. It had an EQ on it, a parametric EQ. However, it was like a preset EQ. So you'd have a dial and you would bring it down for more like a vocal mic. So get rid of the bass, get rid of the deep end of your vocal. And then if you turned it another way, it would actually give you more of a smiley face, so more treble, more bass, but then less mids. Whereas I needed an EQ that I could custom for the drum kit to make it sound good, depending on the speaker, depending on the kit. So I did get rid of this one quite quickly, even though it was almost the spot. It was the right price range, it was the right wattage, it was the right dispersion, it was the right EQ, it was the right channels. I still wasn't happy. So somewhere along this time, I did go to DJ City in Brisbane, and I told them my singing, solo drumming aspirations, playing in a duo band, wanting extra channels, and all these things. And their speaker that they recommended was the Evolve 50M. They're $3,000, and there was no way I thought I could afford that at that time. But as you can see, what I did here was I actually just bought a really cheap speaker secondhand for $50, and I sold it for a little bit more than what I paid for it, and I just kept snowballing the process up. So I went from having that old JBL sub and the alto mixer and the FS audio speakers. I sold all of those. I used that money, and I got an ELX 200 sub. And then I happened to get it when it was on special. It had gone up $500 in price, so I was able to sell mine for a really good price. Use that money to get the Pro Session 1 second hand. Sold that, got a good price. Got the Samsung, sold it, got the next one, and you can see I just kept selling, buying, selling, until I got to my Evolve 50M. Evolve 50M, 120 degrees dispersion, which is what I wanted. I wanted 1,000 watts, so 500 on the sub, 500 on the tops. That's what I want in terms of power. 127 decibels on the max SPL. So if we're looking at that, my max 127 for 85%. I'm looking at 108 decibels. Most of my solo gigs that I've gone to, I'm pushing it about 95 to 100. So it's still not maxing out my speaker. So I'm not pushing it. I'm not going to cause any long-term damage. As you can see on the back, it's got 6 XLR in, which means I could do multiple vocals, guitars, drums, keyboard. I could do Bluetooth backing tracks. I can do a DJ console on channel 5 and 6, which comes later. It had my channels. It had my full app. It's got like an app on your phone that you can just have your mixer and do EQ, reverb and chorus and delay and vocal effects, and then you can save it as a preset. So I have a preset with more of a clean vocal for all of my stuff, drums, vocal, and the DJ deck, and then I have another preset with more of a chorus, flangey, electronic, auto-tune type voice. So now I can just switch between the two. It is amazing having a phone app for your mixer, especially when the drum kit. With all of these other ones, the Yamaha, the JBL, the Samsung, the Pro, I would have to get off my kit, and then I would have to go around the back of the speaker, play with the settings, get up, and then get back on my drum kit. Now with the Evolve, I can do it from my phone, from the drum kit. So I've got the Evolve 50 now. I am not getting rid of that for a long time if I can. Now let's go to, I did a couple of solo gigs. It didn't go so well. I got a lot of feedback, criticism. It was pretty tough. So one client at the gym had recommended me get a DJ deck. He said it was quite fun, and I was like, look, just for shits and giggles, I will get one. I'll add it to my skill set, a new hobby for me to do. So these are, I think, 120, 130. I got one for $40, super cheap. Yes, the crossfader was scratchy, which is why it was sold so cheap, but for me to learn DJ for the first time, doesn't matter. Within a week, within 2 days, I really enjoyed DJing. Within a week, I'd outgrown the console. As you can see, it's pretty small. Luckily enough, I was able to sell that for a good price. And unfortunately, I found someone who was very unwell, and she was getting rid of her Mixstream Pro, which retails at about $1,200, $1,300. I got it for under $400. So I got it at a really good price, and that's basically my DJ setup. The Mixstream Pro with my Evolve 50M. That's my core setup, and then I can just add from there. So as you can see, I've gone for a standalone. The Apple MacBook died. I've got an Evolve 50M with the mixer because the Alto mixer had died. The 12-inch sub covered my JBL. And the top has 120 degree dispersion, so I didn't need 2 speakers. I can get away with 1. The DJ console screen has its own engine OS. I don't need a laptop. It has built-in speakers, so I can practice at home without having to set anything up. And then if I'm at a gig, I've actually got like a small type monitor mix. Sometimes it's not loud enough, but with the Mixstream, you can just tune in the monitor mix to your headphones or earphones. So that is how I got to where I was. So the summary of all of this video is wherever you're looking, either at upgrading your gear or changing direction, or if you're a new musician starting and you want to go solo or you want to be a DJ, I would highly recommend you look at Facebook Marketplace and maybe have a list of particular things you're looking for or items. So when I was shopping for the Yamaha Stage Pass 1K. I was looking at a 30M or a 50M. I was looking at the JBL JBL PRX1. So they were my main three that I was looking at. They had effects, multiple channels, enough power. I could use it for a solo, a duo, or a trio. I didn't want to get a speaker that was only duo. I needed to get the biggest one that would still fit in the car. When it came to the DJ deck, I was looking at the Mixstream Pro, the Prime 4, and the Denon Prime Go. They were my main three I was looking at, and I was just waiting for one of those to get within my budget. So Mixstream Pro it is. But look, this is video number 1. I have a lot of things I wanted to go through. I will set them up, and look, if you got any comments or questions when it comes to each of these gears, I can go through like a full review on each one, and we can go from there. But look, thanks for sitting and listening to my first YouTube video for this channel. Thank you.